Toan had faced countless investors, ministers, and even foreign partners in his life as a CEO. Yet none of those meetings made his heart tremble the way it did that morning. The sun had barely risen, casting a soft golden glow across the quiet road leading to a small rural village. His luxury car looked painfully out of place among the old brick houses and rows of bamboo trees. But for the first time, Toan did not care about his image or status. Today, he was not here as a CEO. He was here as a man in debt, a debt deeper than money could measure. Only days earlier, his world had nearly collapsed when Tu Diem, the woman he loved more than life itself, had been caught in a terrifying accident. He had been in the middle of a meeting when the emergency call came. The memory still played in his mind like a nightmare, the phone slipping from his hand. Documents scattering across the floor, his legs refusing to support him. He had sprinted through the hospital corridors like a madman, shouting her name. When he finally saw her, unconscious and pale, his soul shattered. But fate had not been cruel. A stranger, a simple man with no name or title, had risked his own life to pull Tu Diem from the danger. Without waiting for thanks, without even giving his full name, he had left quietly after ensuring she was safe. Toan had spent every hour since then trying to find him. And when he finally did, he drove without hesitation. Now, standing in front of an old wooden gate, Toan felt something unfamiliar: humility. His hands, usually folded confidently behind his back, were now trembling at his sides. He took a deep breath, and for the first time in his life, he whispered not a command, but a prayer. "Please," he said softly to himself, "let me thank the man who gave me back my world." He raised his hand and knocked. The wooden gate creaked as it opened, revealing a man in his late 30s with sun-darkened skin and hands roughened by labor. He wore no suit, no watch, no aura of authority, just a plain shirt and quiet eyes. Yet to Toan, he stood taller than any billionaire he had ever met. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The man simply looked at Toan with confusion, as if wondering why a well-dressed stranger was standing at his doorstep at dawn. Toan swallowed, suddenly aware of how small his expensive clothes meant in front of true greatness. He stepped forward, then stopped. His throat tightened. I am Toan," he began, voice unsteady. "You do not know me, but you saved someone I love." Recognition lit up in the man's eyes. He shifted awkwardly, scratching the back of his neck. "Oh, the young lady from the accident. I just did what anyone would." "No," Toan said firmly, his voice breaking. "Not anyone. There were many people there, but only you moved." The man blinked, surprised. Toan could no longer hold it in. He dropped to his knees. The dirt beneath him was cold, but his heart burned with sincerity. The man startled, reaching forward to lift him up, but Toan pressed his palms against the ground, bowing deeply. "I am alive today because she is alive," he said, voice trembling, "and she is alive because of you. I do not know how to repay this debt, but from this moment on, I will never forget your kindness. If you ever need anything, I will be there before you even call." Silence fell. The kind man stood frozen, unsure of how to respond. He had saved a life not for reward, but out of instinct. Yet now, seeing a powerful man kneeling before him, he finally understood the weight of what he had done. Slowly, gently, he placed a hand on Toan's shoulder. "Stand up," he said softly. "No man needs to kneel to another. She lived, that is enough." But Toan did not rise. Instead, he looked up, eyes filled with gratitude and determination. "No," he whispered. "From today onward, I honor you not as a stranger, but as family." The man reluctantly guided Toan into his humble home. The small living room smelled faintly of wood smoke and freshly brewed tea. There were no expensive decorations, no polished marble floors, only hand-carved furniture, a faded family photo on the wall, and an atmosphere of quiet peace that money could never buy. Toan sat carefully on the old wooden chair, as if afraid his presence might disturb the purity of the place. The man poured tea into 2 cups, his movements calm and unhurried. "I still do not know your name," Toan said gently. The man gave a modest smile. "Just call me Min." "Min," Toan repeated slowly, committing it to memory like a sacred vow. "Tell me, why did you save her? You could have been hurt." Min shrugged lightly. "If I had walked away, I wouldn't have slept that night. I didn't think, I just moved." Toan stared at him, a simple answer, yet one that struck deeper than any heroic speech. In his world, people calculated profit before action, but here was a man who moved without hesitation, simply because his heart told him to. Suddenly, Toan realized something strange. He had met countless geniuses, engineers, inventors, and entrepreneurs, but never someone who made him feel small in the best way. "You know," Min said with a quiet chuckle, "when I saw you kneel, I was terrified. I thought maybe you had dropped something." Despite the emotions still raw in his chest, Toan let out a short laugh. It was the first genuine laugh he had allowed himself since the accident. Min looked at him, a spark of warmth in his eyes. "You must love her a lot." "To the point I don't know how to live without her," Toan admitted. Min nodded, understanding. He lifted his cup. "Then let's drink not as savior and debtor, but as two men who care for the same person's happiness." Toan's throat tightened again, but this time not from sorrow, from gratitude. He lifted his cup as well. And for the first time in his life, he felt that he wasn't sealing a deal. He was sealing a bond. The quiet clinking of teacups was interrupted by the soft sound of footsteps approaching the door. Toan turned, surprised he had come alone. But before he could react, the door opened gently. There she was, Tu Diem. Her long hair was tied loosely behind her head, her complexion still pale from recovery, but her eyes, those gentle, unwavering eyes, were full of life. She stood there frozen, breath caught in her throat, staring at the man sitting across from Toan, Min. For a moment, she could not move. She had seen his face before, faintly, blurred by panic and pain, as he reached through shattered glass, pulling her to safety. It had felt like a dream then. But now, seeing him again in the warmth of daylight, reality struck with overwhelming force. Her vision blurred as tears rose unbidden. "Toan," she whispered, is this?" Toan stood up at once, moving to her side. He didn't need to answer. She already knew. With trembling steps, Tu Diem approached Min. Her voice failed her, but her tears spoke louder than any words. She lowered herself to her knees, but Min quickly stood up in shock. No, please," he said, flustered. "Don't do that. I didn't save you so you could kneel before me." Toan gently held her shoulders as she trembled. She spoke through broken breaths. "I don't know how to thank you. Every morning I wake up, and I get to see him, because of you." Min looked at her, overwhelmed. He had pulled her from danger without thinking, but he had never imagined that the person he saved would look at him with such pure, tearful gratitude. He exhaled softly, voice low and sincere. "Then live well. That's all the thanks I need." Tu Diem covered her face, crying into her hands not from sorrow, but from a gratitude so deep it made her chest ache. Toan wrapped an arm around her, his own eyes glistening, and in that moment, none of them were rich or poor, hero or victim. They were simply three hearts connected by a miracle. The room fell silent after Tu Diem's tears softened into quiet sobs. The steam from the untouched tea curled upward, vanishing into the air like whispers of fate. Toan's hand tightened around hers, steady and warm. He looked at Min, really looked, not as a stranger, but as a man who had unknowingly become the foundation of his happiness. For a long moment, Toan did not speak. He was searching for words, yet every sentence in his mind seemed too small, too weak, compared to the weight of his heart. Finally, he rose to his feet. "Min," Toan said slowly, voice low with reverence. "You may not want thanks, you may not want recognition, but I will not, allow your kindness to vanish like morning mist. From this day forward, I make you a vow." Min blinked, shifting uncomfortably. but Toan's voice carried the force of an oath. No matter what you need, no matter where you are, I will be there. If you stumble, I will lift you. If you suffer, I will shield you. You are not just Tu Diem's savior. You are my brother now, my family. Tu Diem's eyes widened, tears glimmering as she clutched Toan's arm. She could hear the truth in his words, as if each one was carved into his soul. Min, however, shook his head gently. I am just a man who happened to be there at the right time. But Toan stepped forward, his gaze unwavering. No, you were the miracle I prayed for when I thought I had lost her. And miracles are never accidents. The words hung in the air like a solemn bell. Slowly, Min's resistance softened. His eyes, usually steady, shimmered as though a hidden weight had been lifted. For the first time in years, he felt seen, not for what he lacked, but for what he had given. He extended his rough, calloused hand. Toan clasped it firmly with both of his. Tu Diem covered their joined hands with her own, her tears falling freely once more. 3 hands, 3 hearts, 1 promise. And in that fragile sacred moment, the lines between wealth and poverty, power and simplicity, vanished. What remained was something rarer, something eternal, a bond born not from blood, but from sacrifice and gratitude. In a world where success is often measured by wealth, power, or reputation, this story reminds us that true greatness lies not in what we achieve, but in how deeply we remember and honor those who helped us along the way. Toan may have been a powerful CEO, but it was not his money or status that made him noble. It was the moment he humbled himself, bowed in gratitude, and acknowledged that even the smallest act of kindness can become the foundation of a destiny. Min did not save Tu Diem for praise. He acted simply because goodness does not wait for reward. Yet his quiet sacrifice changed 3 lives forever. The lesson is clear. Never forget the hands that lifted you when you were falling. Never overlook the ones who stood beside you when no one else did. Success is hollow without gratitude. Wealth is empty without humility.
And sometimes, the greatest miracles in life are not the ones we receive, but the people who give without asking for anything in return.